Alright guys, welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be working on, as you can see here, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man custom. So beginning now, working on Zbrush. I found this 3D model on CG Trader, which lately I've been doing that a lot. But yeah, I actually found this model. It's really well designed, it has a lot of texture and detail. So what I'm beginning to do here is I'm separating it into parts for all the joints, so the upper chest, the lower chest, or the lower abdomen. And then yeah, just separating it into all parts, splitting it in half so you can basically sandwich it onto the figure. And then for the arms and stuff, separating it so I can add like a wrist peg to it, the forearms as well, so it can still articulate and the forearms can still hinge. And yeah, just adding all those, separating them all, so then later I can 3D print them and then attach them to the figure and still allow it to, you know, have articulation, still be able to move, but have this nice detail. Is way better than like having to sculpt it by hand or having to just, you know, paint on the webs like just with no actual sculpt. This ends up a nicer result. And yeah, to describe specifically what I'm doing now is I basically duplicated the object, which is the forearm, then I shrinked it a bit, stretched it out, and I turn it into a basically first you have to turn in a live boolean, which basically you can test out how certain objects can cut away. So like you turn the object into a cutter, so it cuts away part of the sculpt. And what I did there is I duplicated it and turned it into a cutter so that it basically hollows it from the inside. So that's sort of the rough explanation. Obviously I'm not a ZBrush teacher or anything like that. I'm not an expert, but you know, through watching tutorials and stuff, I get a little bit of information to see how you do all those different things and all that. As you can see, that's what I'm doing right now. Again, basically I duplicate it, I turn it into a way that it hollows out with the actual shape, so it ends up hollowing it out nicely. And then after it's hollowed out, I split it in half so that it can actually, you know, come together around the figure, because you're not gonna be able to slide it all the way up, because that way it's just sort of comes in together. And then for the ankle, I separated it, added a peg hole so that you can I can pop off the feet of the figure the base figure that I'm using, and then just pop these new ones in that have the sculpt and everything. And same with this I'm just gonna wrap around the calf, so like the boot section, I'm just gonna wrap it all the way around it and then just glue it. And now you can see all of the different separated pieces and everything. So the shoulder pad, I 3D printed it and all that, but it ended up not working out for the figure, so later on I didn't even attach it because it was a hassle to try to attach it and all that. You can see the boots, I separated them into two parts. And then when I do for the left and the right side, I actually mirror it so I don't have to do it two times. So there's like I duplicate the object and then I mirror it so like it flips it, and that way you have a left and a right, but you don't have to do it two times. So it's a good time saver to do that in that way. And yeah, so now beginning specifically with the figure, and step number one was to obviously begin sanding, because you know the 3D printed sculpt that I made has like chest and has like abdomen and it has like a bit of thickness. So in order to allow it to properly attach and like be more flush, I got to remove the chest. I have to make it as flat as possible, so when I attach the, you know, sort of armor pieces, if you will, or like the shell pieces, it won't like stick out and it'll actually close a bit nicer. Either way, even though I'm doing this right, and as you can see there, I sanded a great amount, it'll still have some gaps in there, and later on I'm gonna go in with some clay or some epoxy sculpt and just fill in the gaps. I'm not gonna sculpt in the web lines because it's really gonna be like a little, just a thin piece where it's not gonna be 100% like seamless. So I'll just add the epoxy sculpt to like fill in those gaps, and then just paint on the webs to sort of, you know, make it look like it's one piece. And yeah, one thing that I was not too happy about was like the amount that the webs protrude out. Like they don't stick out as much as I wanted them to be, you know, because in the movie you can really see them stick out and like pop out. So, and I really didn't know how I was gonna go about like making them stick out more. I guess I would have to do it manually, where I like individually select every web and then just make them like protrude more, and that would have been a lot of time. And also I wasn't sure how they were going to end up looking once printed, so If I do in the future, I might do a version 2, maybe a black suit version. But yeah, so as you just seen for like the past couple minutes, I've been super gluing them all onto the figure. And yeah, just obviously matching like for example, the back spider, I need it to match. So like when I painted it, it would be seamless. The webs too, seeing how it like matches and how it goes. And yeah, again, not worrying about the gaps. I'm gonna fill those in later. And filling in, you know, the boot sections, the wrists and the boots. I ended up having to actually glue on because I couldn't like exactly match the size of the peg with the size of the boot, because Zbrush doesn't really have any like way to measure the holes specifically. That's more of like a there's different types of 3D modeling apps that have where like you can actually put in the measurements of holes. Zbrush just doesn't have that. So that's that. And then now beginning this figure, I wanted to have a white primer. Black primer would have not ended up good because the red and the blue would have, you would have to put too many coats on, and then too many coats of paint would have eventually covered up the detail and the webbing. So white, I would definitely recommend using a white primer, a white or a gray, but really I just say go for white. No need to go with the gray. And also, I actually ended up hand painting this because I didn't want to do all the masking, but I feel like probably if I would have used an airbrush, it would have ended up a lot cleaner, to be honest. So it's a give or take really. You either mask or you have a nicer result. And at the time, the airbrush that I had was having some difficulties. I was having some difficulties with the airbrush, I mean. But recently I got a new one that's a lot nicer and it's a lot more convenient to use. So again, like I said, I might do a version 2 of this. Depends. And also what happened, and I ended up getting that bit of the video, but when I was super gluing on one of the armor pieces on the figure, the left shoulder, basically the left shoulder ball joint, I was using some super glue, but it was like a liquid type of super glue, and it got like inside the joint and it completely solidified the joint, so it was just stuck. And I tried to rotate it to get it unstuck, and it ended up breaking completely. So what I did is I just glued the joint back on there. So like the left shoulder has no articulation. You can't hinge it up. You can't rotate it. Nothing. It's just stuck there. And you know, I didn't want to scrap the whole custom, so I just left it that way. So his left arm is just gonna be down the whole time. A bit disappointing and all that, but like I said, another reason why I could make a version 2. But in order to justify making a version 2, I really have to do a lot of upgrades, so we'll see. And so now what I've done already is painted the whole figure red with just like a light sort of base red. But what I'm doing now specifically is using oil and taking more of a darker, you know, red to get sort of that, like, because it has sort of like a silky metallic sort of material. It's not metallic like an iron spider, but it has sort of a, you know, sort of a reflective, sort of like a silk, like I said, or like a satin feel. So that's what I'm trying to capture with that, is adding like a bit of a darker red with the oil wash all throughout. And it adds a nice tone, and again it like deepens the red, so it like adds a little bit of, you know, mixing up the colors and a little bit of texture and all that. And the same thing I'm gonna do with the blue too, so that's why I'm using a really like light blue, a vibrant blue, because my plan is to later, as you can see now, using that oil, an oil wash to really deepen it and sort of desaturate it a little bit, but still have that base to still have like a bit of saturation and an overall nicer coat. Because the oil, I don't really like using it for base coats. The oil paints or like an oil wash, I would rather have like an acrylic base with just like a little bit of wash, a little bit of you know, added detail with the oil. And now beginning on the very tedious process of painting all the webbing. And like I said, I think it would have ended up nicer, even the painting process, if they're a bit thicker and protruded and it's like stuck out more, because that way like it would be easier to basically, like your brush, because it's stuck out more, it won't rub against the red section, so it would just come out a lot cleaner. But I still managed, obviously if I messed up the lines or whatever, I'll come back with the red and clean it up. But yeah, it was pretty tedious, but I'm still happy preferring this way than to like for example, it has just a plain body. You have to add the webbing by hand without like no guidance, because this helps a lot painting it, because like you have it, the sculpt literally telling you where all the webs are, so you just have to match it. As in like like I said before, if it was just a straight body, you have to paint the webs by hand all the way. Like if you don't match the left with the right, it's gonna look off. Not this, because this is all sculpted, so you're not gonna get confused.
Niggas long face, duck a case, get the cash. I've been living fast, still far from average. Real talk, all this shit is right outside what I imagine.
A metallic blue dry brush in all the blue sections, and adding this matte varnish. But apart from that, that was the end of this custom, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the final review.
Anymore. What about my generous proposal? Are you in or are you out?
It's you who's out, Cop.
I don't want to hurt you. Leave now.
I guess you haven't heard. I'm the sheriff around these parts.
Okay.